Most men approach attraction like a math equation. If they provide enough stability, kindness, and a logical, good life, the result should be a woman's devotion. They treat dating as a series of boxes to check, assuming that a clear plan and a solid resume are the keys to a woman's heart. However, attraction doesn't live in the logical, analytical part of the brain. It doesn't care about what makes sense on paper or what a person should want. Instead, attraction is an ancient, biological instinct that resides deep within the body and the subconscious. It is a raw, emotional response that often completely ignores social rules, moral boundaries, or even the existence of a long-term commitment. Because this instinct is biological rather than intellectual, it operates independently of a woman's conscious willpower. This explains the phenomenon that confuses so many. A woman can have a perfectly stable life, a dedicated spouse, and every possible comfort, yet still find herself feeling a sudden, magnetic pull toward a different man. In these moments, she isn't making a calculated choice to be unfaithful or unhappy. Her nervous system is simply reacting to an emotional frequency or a type of masculine energy that her current environment no longer provides. It is a response to contrast, a spark of novelty or strength that wakes up a part of her that has gone dormant. When this internal shift happens, the body's visceral response begins to override the mind's logical reasoning. The invisible instinct is that tipping point where the feeling of being alive and desired starts to carry more weight than the safety of routine. Most men fail here because they try to use logic to fight an emotional fire, but you cannot argue with a heartbeat. Understanding this means realizing that attraction isn't something you earn through good behavior. It is something you trigger by tapping into that deeper, unspoken emotional language. When emotion finally defeats reason, that is the exact moment where true, undeniable attraction is born. The fundamental mistake most men make is treating attraction like a sales pitch, as if they can literally talk a woman into liking them. They fall into the trap of over-explaining their worth, leading with their professional achievements, or constantly checking for signs of approval. This creates a heavy chase energy that acts as a massive attraction killer. When you push for a specific outcome, like a phone number, a date, or a compliment, you are unintentionally signaling that you need her validation to feel valuable. In her mind, this lowers your status because it suggests that your confidence is dependent on her reaction. This pressure creates a wall. Instead of feeling drawn to you, she feels the need to defend herself against your expectations. On the opposite end of the spectrum, many men suffer from a different kind of failure, the fear of rejection. These men are so terrified of making a mistake or offending a woman that they become completely passive. They play it so safe that they never create a spark, eventually fading into the background of her emotional awareness. By being overly polite or hesitant, they fail to provide any emotional friction or excitement, becoming just another face in the crowd. They think they are being respectful, but they are actually being invisible. They wait for a green light that never comes because they aren't providing the masculine lead that a woman's instinct looks for. The real secret to escaping these two extremes isn't about working harder to pursue her or asking for permission to be interested. Instead, it lies in mastering the emotional atmosphere. Attraction doesn't grow in the middle of a sales pitch or in the silence of a man who is too afraid to speak. It grows in the space created by a man who is present, grounded, and entirely unbothered by the outcome of the interaction. When you are genuinely comfortable in your own skin and don't need a specific response from her, you radiate a sense of quiet power. This lack of neediness is incredibly rare and magnetic. It allows her to feel the tension and the curiosity naturally without the suffocating weight of a man who is trying too hard to win. To create genuine tension, you must break the predictable cycle where a man feels he must constantly prove his worth to be noticed. Most social interactions follow a standard script. The man acts as a performer, throwing out jokes, sharing his accomplishments, or trying to be as charming as possible in hopes of receiving a metaphorical standing ovation. When you approach a woman with this mindset, you are essentially auditioning for her approval, which immediately places her in the role of the judge. This dynamic is tiring for her and exhausting for you. To spark real attraction, you have to flip that script by entering the conversation with the absolute mindset that you are not there to impress her. When you stop performing, you transition from being the one on stage to being the observer. And that change in perspective is where the power shifts. When you become an observer, the pressure of the interaction vanishes from your shoulders and moves into the space between you. Because you aren't busy trying to win her interest, you create a rare and magnetic kind of tension that she isn't used to experiencing. Suddenly, she realizes she isn't the one sitting back and judging your performance. Instead, she starts to wonder why you aren't trying to impress her like every other man does. This creates a deep sense of curiosity. She begins to ask herself what you see when you look at her and what your standards are. By being the observer, you are subtly signaling that you are evaluating the situation just as much as she is, which makes your attention feel much more valuable because it isn't being given away for free. This shift is rooted in a rare form of emotional independence. It communicates to a woman that you are completely centered in your own reality and that your sense of self-worth is not tied to her reaction or her smile. This outcome independence is a hallmark of true masculine strength. It tells her instinct that you are a man who doesn't need to be rescued or validated, which makes your presence feel safe, grounded, and incredibly intriguing. When she feels that you are stable and unshakable, her natural feminine instinct is to move closer to that strength. By simply stepping out of the performer role, you stop being a salesman and start being a man worth knowing, allowing the attraction to grow naturally in the quiet confidence of your observation. Most men stay on the surface when they try to build a connection, relying on compliments about a woman's hair, her outfit, or her physical appearance. While these comments might be polite, they are predictable and often go in one ear and out the other because she has heard them 1,000 times before. Surface-level flattery doesn't create a lasting spark because it doesn't touch her identity. It only touches her mirror. To trigger a deeper level of attraction, you have to look past the exterior and notice her mind. When you focus on her perspective rather than just her looks, you move the interaction from a shallow exchange to an emotional experience. This is the difference between noticing what she wears and noticing how she perceives the world. When you use a phrase like, "I like the way you think, I didn't expect that," you are launching a powerful psychological double play. First, you are validating her intellect, which is far more meaningful than validating her appearance because it feels like a compliment to her true self. Second, you are introducing the element of surprise. By saying you didn't expect a certain thought from her, you are admitting that she managed to break through an assumption you had. This is a subtle challenge that creates instant curiosity. She immediately starts wondering, what did he think of me before? And what specifically about my mind caught his attention? This internal questioning keeps you at the forefront of her thoughts long after the conversation ends. By acknowledging her mental world, you stop treating her like just another face in the crowd and start treating her like an individual energy. This makes her feel uniquely seen in a way that most men never even attempt. It signals that you are a man who actually pays attention and has the depth to appreciate more than just the obvious. When a woman feels that you are genuinely intrigued by the way her brain works, her defenses naturally soften because she no longer feels like she's being hunted for her looks. Instead, she feels a rare sense of mental connection. This is where desire truly takes root, not in the vanity of a physical compliment, but in the excitement of being discovered on a deeper level. One of the most effective ways to lower a woman's defenses is to explicitly remove the pressure of an objective. Most men enter a conversation with a visible agenda. They want a phone number, a date, or a specific type of validation. Women are highly sensitive to this predatory energy. They can feel when a man is just waiting for his turn to speak or pushing for a result. When you say, "I'm not trying to convince you of anything, I just want to understand you," you instantly dismantle that tension. You are signaling that you aren't there to sell yourself or to trap her into a decision. By making it clear that your only goal is genuine curiosity, you give her the rare gift of emotional room to breathe. When this pressure is removed, a physical shift happens within her. In most interactions with men, a woman's nervous system is slightly on guard, ready to either perform the role of the interested party or reject an unwanted advance. But when she realizes you aren't pushing for anything, her body naturally begins to relax. Her breathing slows, her shoulders drop, and she stops scanning for hidden motives. This relaxation is the fertile ground where trust and desire actually begin to grow. You aren't there to argue with her opinions or correct her logic. You are simply there as a calm, steady presence. This shows her that you are comfortable with yourself and, more importantly, comfortable with her exactly as she is. The real connection is built in the silence and the space that follows that statement. By choosing to listen rather than to persuade, you demonstrate a level of masculine maturity that is incredibly uncommon. Most men are so busy trying to prove they are the one that they forget to actually see the person standing in front of them. When you prioritize understanding her over winning her, you become a safe harbor in a world full of noise. This lack of urgency doesn't make you look weak. It makes you look powerful and self-assured. It tells her that you don't need to clutch at her attention to keep it, which ironically makes her want to move closer to you and fill that space with her own interest. Understanding how these emotional triggers work gives you a massive advantage in human connection, but that advantage comes with a serious responsibility. It requires a high level of personal ethics because you are essentially learning how to navigate the deepest parts of someone else's subconscious. The goal here isn't to create emotional chaos, break up families, or manipulate people's feelings just because you can. Instead, the focus is on becoming a man who is so emotionally steady and grounded that attraction becomes a natural consequence of your presence, rather than something you have to force. When you understand the invisible instinct, you realize that your energy has power, and a man of character never uses that power to cause harm or play reckless games with another person's heart. Real power isn't just the ability to wake up desire in someone else. It's the discipline to manage that desire with wisdom once it shows up. It's easy to spark tension, but it takes a truly mature man to handle that tension without crossing moral or personal lines. This means being able to recognize when a woman is reacting to your energy and staying centered enough to lead the interaction with integrity. You aren't there to take advantage of an emotional response. You are there to be a high-value presence who remains consistent regardless of how intense the vibe becomes. This self-control is what separates a boy looking for a temporary ego boost from a man who commands long-term respect. Ultimately, true mastery is about being the eye of the storm. When the atmosphere between two people becomes heavy with attraction and the emotional energy starts to swirl, most men lose their cool. They either get desperate, get aggressive, or get overwhelmed. A disciplined man remains calm, observant, and completely in control of himself. By staying grounded, you show her that you aren't shaken by the intensity of the moment. This internal strength is the ultimate sign of a leader. You provide the stability that allows attraction to exist without it turning into a destructive force. In short, the more you understand how to influence the emotions of others, the more you must master the discipline of your own.